Hi guys, so this is my very first video on this channel, or you can say as on the YouTube itself. So what we'll see is how ChatGPT works, not the LLM part, but the request response part. What actually happens in the request and response. So for that, ever thought about how does ChatGPT remembers the previous conversations or the previous messages you have been sent to it, correct? So what happens is it does not have any memory. LLMs don't have any memory. But what's more interesting is the request response. So there is some happening for every messages. You can summarize this video into like that. So we'll just quickly inspect it. The Chrome DevTools, open the network tab and just clear out the scripts requests and just type in hi. Okay, so this is the new conversations, very initial message, first message. I just clear it again, just not to make it cluttered, and that's it. I sent hi and the chat GPT says hey, how it's going. Okay, so there is an API endpoint called conversation. If I go to conversation and payload, we can see the actual payload that is being sent to an backend server via API. Okay, what happens is we'll just see the three keys, the important ones. Okay, the first is messages. So message is basically an array of objects. So the first object is ID, obviously the message ID that is unique, the author as us user, content type is text, and part is an uh, array of strings. So you can see there is some space after hi. That is because it is also considered as a character. Okay, when I sent hi, basically here I typed in space, so it also went in the payload. Okay, so it does not trim it, it considered it as a character. So next is some metadata, we'll let it be. The next is model. Okay, so you can see auto. Why auto? See, recently ChatGPT released the new ChatGPT 5, but it is set as auto here. Why? Because the front end UI part does not set the model explicitly. The front end sets and model as auto. You can think of it like that. So you can't really set an model like a GPT-5 or GPT-4o like that. So next is parent message ID. Parent message ID, you can see there is no ID but text. You can see client created root. So what happens is, what this created root is, this is the very first initial message. Okay, before that there was no chat gpt response. So for every chat gpt response, the parent message id is associated with that response. So as this is the initial message, so there is no any previous response, so it says client created root. Okay, if I go to response, you can see there is multiple events and data. Okay, so this is the format from it's basically a stream through which your request and response works. Basically response works. If we want to understand how ChatGPT handles the context, we'll just backtrack it and send hi to. Okay, not space this time, obviously. Hi to. So the new API endpoint is at conversation. We'll just go to conversations payload and we can see the role, user ID, the message. Okay, ID has been changed associated with that message, and we can see hi to. Okay, but here if you see parent message ID has now an ID. If I copy this ID of payload and go to the previous conversation, and in the response, if I control F, command F, anything, if you are on the specific, I'm on Mac, so I'll be just I'll be just going with command F, find, paste that, and enter. So you can see there is an ID for the role assistant. So the chat GPT is considered as assistant, and the response from the chat GPT has associated ID, which is been set with the next message parent message ID. So what happens here? So it means the first message is hi, the second message is hi too. The first initial conversation message would have initial created client created root. The second hi too would be having the response ID of the previous message from the chat GPT, or the response ID of the assistant. So that way it creates a chaining, correct, of the previous messages. So that would also be considered for having the context of the previous message. Okay, correct. So that was it. So thank you.